Hello, it's me, Pat Campbell, radio talk show host from Tulsa, Oklahoma, joined by Rollo Tomasi, the rational male. And you're watching Red Pill 101. This is episode 10, Cheaters and Manipulators, which promises to be one of our better installments. So with that said, Rollo, how you doing?
Good. I'm going to try to keep this as radio friendly as possible. The guys, I think on yesterday's Red Man group, we were talking about how many F-bombs we're dropping. I'm like, maybe I'm going to try to keep things friendly on this one.
that was the biggest, I guess, challenge for me bringing you to terrestrial radio is that I can't use that language. I don't have a problem with people using it, but it's just, I'll get my butt fined big time by the FCC. So, and I think when we clean it up a little too, we reach a bigger audience that might otherwise be put off or offended by it, right?
I think so too. I'll try to keep it clean. Try to keep it clean for the kids. It's a family show.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So we want to talk about cheaters today. We want to talk about men. We want to talk about women. We want to talk about married men, single men, maybe guys that are in long-term relationships. And we've discussed this on a couple of my terrestrial programs over the past year or so, why men cheat. And I talked to you before about this guest that Oprah had on her program a while back. He's a marriage counselor, Gary Neuman. It's a guy, and he's estimated that 1 in 2.7 men will cheat, and most of their wives will never know about it. And he gets into some of the statistics as to why they're doing that, right? What's the number one reason men cheat? And this is the one that sort of blew everybody away when we brought it up on the radio. It says 92% of men said it wasn't primarily about the sex, which most people generally think it is, right? The majority said it was an emotional disconnection, specifically a sense of feeling underappreciated. Ladies, if you're listening, hear that word again, underappreciated, a lack of thoughtful gestures. Gary says that men are very emotional beings. They just don't look like that, or they don't seem like that, or they don't tell you that. So I want you to tackle those two things, the 92 number there. And I don't know that I agree with Gary that we're these emotional creatures. I think women.
And remember that Gary Neuman, and it's not the guy who wrote Cars in the 80s, not the musician Gary Neuman,
not that guy.
The marriage counselor Gary Neuman.
Right.
And that's I think where we got to start with this is because this is a guy who is a quote unquote professional marriage counselor. And I think if anybody's read my work, they already know what my opinions are of marriage counseling. It's
that really is a femme-centric profession, if ever there was one, right?
And it's there to sort of there's two reasons to go to a marriage counselor, and both of them are to end the marriage. I always call marriage counseling last stop before toll. Okay, I mean that's where it's going to end. But there's two reasons really for when women say, "Hey, I want to go to marriage counseling." It's almost 90% of the time it's because she's already decided she's going to go. She's going to divorce the guy, but she needs to make it look like she put up some sort of effort. So when the divorce proceedings happen, then it'll make it look like she did her due diligence. Right. So there's that aspect of it. And then there's also the aspect of it where, if people are going to split up, I think when guys say, "Hey, let's go see a marriage counselor," I think that is mostly men trying to cling on or trying to recapture something that they felt is gone. Now, I really think that happens when a woman is the one who is cheating, doing the cheating.
Are there any stats on who initiates or suggests going to a marriage counselor? Because again, I would think it would primarily women.
If somebody wants to give that to us in the comments, I would love to see that, because that would really help with especially a lot of the guys who are in the married red pill right now. So I think that you have to take the fact that, whatever this guy's saying with kind of a grain of salt, because all marriage counseling, particularly if you're a marriage counselor in like since the 70s all the way up to the 2000s to where we are today, I would say primarily it is a woman's field, or it is a completely gynocentric field. It's there to make the woman feel better. It's there to, I've called Jordan Peterson to the carpet for stuff like this, where it's it's this negotiation. It ends up becoming a negotiation of desire when the desire is not there. I just had a
little side note. As a guy, would you ever go to a female marriage counselor for you and your wife?
No, I would not. I would
not, because you're guaranteed to walk away loser, right?
Well, I as Rolo Tomasi would not go to a marriage counselor, period, simply because it's I know it. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, it's if I'm at the point where I say maybe we should go to a counselor, we need to bring somebody else in to sort of like negotiate the terms of our marriage right here. Yeah. It's done. The desire is gone. So it's not about like most marriage counselors want to say it's about trust. You need to rebuild the trust, particularly after cheating. You need to rebuild the trust. It's not about the trust. It's about desire. It's about one of the reasons is one of these partners cheated on the other, or they broke that monogamous contract, which is really what it is. You can call it a covenant if you want to be religious about it. You can call it a contractual arrangement or agreement if you want to get sort of legalistic about it. But what it is, it's an agreement that I'm only going to have sex with you and you're only going to have sex with me. And that's just the way this whole thing is going to work. Though that is the stipulations of this marriage. We can talk about marriage, the contractual ideals behind that later on. But one of the two has broken off has broken that arrangement. And so what happens is that is only because there's a lack of desire there. That's not, I think that saying that it's about appreciation. Yeah, I'm not going to say that doesn't play an element of it, but I think that when a guy like this, who is in a primarily female-centric field of marriage counseling, it's like saving marriages. I mean, what are really marriages? To a woman, what is a marriage? It's to have kids, and it's sort of this social contract, or it's this place. It's that I'll say the atmosphere, the environment within which we can form a family, right? Right. Well, if there's no desire there, and you and I have talked about this before, if sex is the glue that holds a relationship together, then it's desire that really prompts that sexuality, that want to have to be with that other person. Because when push comes to shove, cheating is about sex. Okay, it's about having sex with somebody who is not your partner. Simple as that. And so when you listen to a guy like this, particularly on Oprah, I'm already skeptical. Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
Oprah, the high priestess of the feminine imperative. So, but let's just say for lack of for lack of better terms, or for just sake of argument here, let's say he's correct. Well, one of the reasons I think that men feel unappreciated, the reason he brings this up, is because it's safe. It's safe to say that. It's safe to say, well, men feel unappreciated. And so what do they say is, well, men need to toughen up. Men need to sack up. They need to man up. They need to, their wife isn't their mother, and they need to have a new appreciation themselves for their wife. And they'll turn it around. They'll try to make it sound like he's this little whiny baby, because he feels underappreciated. And so he felt like he had to go and do,
Let me jump in on that. Let me jump in on that, because I think there are, and I know a lot of guys, married guys, maybe married 10, 15, 20 years, who feel maybe underappreciated isn't the word, taken for granted. Dad's always going to be there. Dad's always going to, do this, do that.
Daddy the wallet.
Yeah,
wallet.
That's what it is. It's like you're taken for granted. You become an entitlement. Everybody thinks they're owed you, right?
Yeah, and I understand this, especially the feeling that you're being taken for granted, and the feeling that everything that you put out comes second. And we've talked about this before. I think we were talking about this when we did the special edition, when we did the fatherhood edition. We were saying, is it possible? That was one of my questions. Is it possible for a man to make himself his mental point of origin even after he's had kids and he's had a marriage? And I would say it is vitally important that you do so, that you have to do that. Because if you're not, I have a, and you probably read this in my first book. It's a seminal post that I put up, and it's a chapter in the first book, and it's called Appreciation. Right. And I think that just talking about that is, or just expecting that appreciation it's kind of, I know that guys want to feel that, and they want to have that pat on the back, and they want to say, hey, good job, because that's how that's part of men's idealistic concept of love. And if you've ever seen the end of Saving Private Ryan, where Private Ryan is actually at the grave of Sergeant Miller, the guy, Tom Hanks' character, right? And at the end of that movie, Tom Hanks tells him before he dies, he says, earn this, earn this, earn this, And so he's at the end of the movie, he's at the grave, and he's praying over the grave, and he's talking to the soul of Sergeant Miller. And he looks up at his wife, and his wife and kids are there, and they got no clue what he's going through or what his emotional state is or anything like that. And I thought that was a really poignant part of that scene. I've used this as one of the differences between men and women's concepts of love, because what that man is doing is he's saying, he goes to his wife and he says, tell me I'm a good man. Tell me I deserve this. Tell me because his life, so many guys died to bring him home, because he was like the last of like they didn't want to have like 5 siblings die in war or something like that. And so that's why they went to go and bring him back. That's really the premise of the movie, right? But at the end of it, he's saying, tell me I'm a good man. And his wife is just like, yeah, you're a good guy. She completely not understanding what the guy was talking about, because she couldn't share that experience. And she also doesn't share that man's concept of love, because women's concept of love is opportunistic and men's is idealistic. And that's why that was I think a really poignant part of that movie, because it separates what men's love is from women's love. And I have a post called, I think it's called Love Story, where I analyzed both of these, and I put the videos in there. But the second movie that I analyzed was Titanic.
Women are incapable of loving the way a man loves a woman. It's like physically impossible for them to do it.
Well, I think that I'm glad we got to this part, because I've been wanting to do this for a while. But if you go and you look in that post called Love Story, and I'll put the link up there in just a minute. It is, I can compare and contrast 2 movies. One of them was Saving Private Ryan, and that scene at the end. Then at the end of Titanic, where Rose is this old woman, and the man, the kid, Jack, dies in the end and slips down into a watery, icy grave, right? And she has the heart of the diamond or whatever, and she lets that slip into the water, as she kind of passes away, and then her life is over. But it's interesting because you look at her past life, and at the end scene of that, you see all of these pictures of all the things she's done in her life up to becoming this old woman. And they go back to the Titanic, and it's this real dramatic, overly dramatic kind of ending here. And you see all these pictures of her, and she's this woman who's done all these great things. Like she's flown across the Atlantic, like she's Amelia Earhart, and it shows her kids, and it shows the husband who is like kind of this dutiful beta who will never ever have the part of her that Jack had, or that Jack got from her, and that's symbolized in that diamond that she lets go. And so what I wrote about there is that woman represents women's opportunistic concept of love. And what that means is that she's thinking about she's a consummate, like, lifelong alpha widow. And the alpha widow is the woman who had the guy that she thought was her soulmate back when she was in her youth, and she was in her crazy party years, and she fell madly in love with him. And I think who is it?
The One That Got Away.
The One That Got Away. I can't remember. Katy Perry wrote that song, The One That Got Away. Another perfect example of that. But that is an illustration of women's love versus men's love. Women's love is opportunistic, and that's why there's this pining for the alpha of her past. So she marries the beta, but she pines for the guy that she has real, true, genuine desire. And I'm sort of prefacing that here because I think that it's important to understand the differences in concepts of love between men and women, because women's love is really informed by hypergamy, which is their sexual strategy, but that is also informed by their biology. Okay, like women are going to be more. They want 2 things out of a man. They want alpha fucks and beta bucks. Oops, see there, I blew it. They want alpha seed and beta need. Okay, and they want to have that hot, biologically, genetically superior man, and she needs also the superior guy who is going to provision for her and be there for security and be an emotional investment and be a good parental investment opportunity for her as well. And rarely do those 2 meet in the same guy. Whereas men believe in love outside themselves. They believe that a woman should be able to love him exactly the way that he idealistically thinks. And oftentimes it's there nowadays, I think, really since the sexual revolution, that's been informed by this kind of Disney fantasy, like the soulmate myth. For instance, it used to be that women were only really seriously invested in the soulmate myth. Well, now, really, since the late 60s, early 70s, on up to where we are right now, men invest themselves as well into the soulmate myth, because we have made men women and women men. And so when I say that men and women have different concepts, or when I say that women have an opportunistic concept of love, women will just shriek when I say that. I was like, you got to understand, I know that has a negative connotation, but that opportunism and that allowing oneself to love another man or love a man for certain aspects of that man, and what that woman loves that man for what he is, not who he is. And so, for instance, like when Rose has this one part of her that her husband that she, according to the end of the movie, that she spent the rest of her life with and had kids with, and you're looking at two sacrifices, both of them male, I should say. Whereas Jack sacrificed himself for Rose, whereas Sergeant Miller sacrificed himself for Private Ryan. Okay, so there's first of all, sacrifice is almost it's almost universally going to be a male trait. So
the white knight,
the white knight. We expect men to sacrifice because eggs are expensive, sperm is cheap. So we're looking at two different. They're still sacrifices, but one illustrates how men love, and the other illustrates how women love. And again, I don't want the women listening to this thinking like, oh, well, he thinks they're opportunistic, or women can't actually love men. No, they can. It's just that they have to find that balance between that opportunism and that idealism, and men need to sort of come back down to earth and understand how women love. And then women themselves need to understand how men love, which is idealistically. And there needs to be sort of a melding between those two concepts. And that's how you get like your grandparents or your parents are still married, right? It's because they found a way to meld those two concepts of love. So let me just be as vocal as I can about this. I've never said, and I never will say, that women cannot love a guy. They do. Obviously they do. Okay. But the concepts are different. When I say that a woman fundamentally lacks the capacity to love a man as he believes a woman should be able to love him, is the end part of that. So guys need to understand, I'm not saying that, well, women can't love men, or it's my way.
I think our definition of love is different. A guy's definition of love versus a woman's definition of love, they're not the same thing. They never happen. Yeah. I want to get back to this Gary Neuman, the doctor that Oprah had on. Okay. So another thing he said in his research, he said Gary uncovered the number one complaint cheating husbands have about their home sex lives is, guess what? Believe it or not, the majority say it's the frequency of sex. In fact, we just did a program on this a couple of episodes back on a sexless marriage. What's the official definition? If you're having it 10 times or less per year, you're in a sexless marriage. Per year.
They basically break it down to once a month. If you are having sex once a month or less, you are technically in a sexless marriage.
There's some guys watching this right now who think that's pretty good. I'm serious. That's sad. Yeah, well, once a month. Yeah, wow.
And that's why I think one of the reasons why particularly religious guys get addicted to pornography.
Right.
If you want to debate the word addiction, fine, we'll debate that. But I think that one of the reasons that they get hooked or they get habituated, I think, to pornography
is the way for them to safely cheat. Safely cheat. With women, it's romance novels. It's the same thing. It's, guys are visual. They have the visual, right? But with women, it's up here, upstairs. And that's where the romance novels come in. Why do you think, 50 Shades of Grey and all these Harlequin romance novels are so hot? That's what's going on.
We don't see any religious men divorcing their wives because they got all habituated to 50 Shades of Grey.
Right.
Or they want to go see Aquaman because it's got hot Jason Momoa in it right now, right? We don't say, oh, she's having an emotional affair with it. We just simply don't do that because we don't want to step on conventions. We don't want to step on
that 50 Shades of Grey, when that came out, one of the biggest blowaways on that, and I talked about it with Dr. Everett Piper from Oklahoma Wesleyan University, was who was going to see it. And it was who was buying the book. And it was Christian women.
Yes.
Christian women.
And I don't, maybe you brought this up with Dr. Piper as well, but when the Twilight series came out, very popular with Christian women because it has that similar plot line. It's the alpha. It's like that Beauty and the Beast thing. It's like this guy is a superhuman, horrible beast, and I'm the only woman that can totally tame him. And usually it's this, the character of the woman is written as generic and as white bread as possible, so that the women who are reading this can kind of visualize themselves as the main character, so that they can be the ones and sort of insert themselves into the story as well.
Here's one more walk away on the Gary Neuman thing. This is one I sort of threw in there just from talking to people over the years. Once the woman gets their guy, whether it's in a long-term relationship or a marriage, okay, they let their guard down. They quit trying. They don't have to try anymore. Why? Because they've already got their goal. So all the things they did to get that guy, all the things that attracted him to her, they're not doing it anymore. So they don't have to be sexy anymore because they got what they wanted. And you know, that's an example of how manipulative women can be. And that's another thing we're going to get into later in the program.
Yeah, well, I'm glad we kind of talked about the ending of Titanic there, because that sort of dovetails into why guys cheat, honestly. Because when that woman ends up with the guy that is not the alpha that she was hoping to spend the rest of her life with, that's when she's the guy that she loves, but she's not in love with. Right? He's great as a provider. He's great with the kids. He does homework. He does, he does the dishes. He puts the diapers on, but he's not exciting. He's not as fun as Jack was before he slid to his icy grave down the bottom of the sea. Right. So there's that kind of that hypergamous doubt for women. They have to balance it out. They have to say, well, can I live like this? And I think that especially during a woman's epiphany phase, what you're seeing there, I think, is you're having this conflict between a woman's id and her ego. And, the id really wants the hot, sexy guy. She wants the Jason Momoa. She wants the Jack. She wants the guy that she pines for as an alpha widow. She really wants that. But her ego knows that she needs to plan for the future, and she needs to have kids. And she knows that those guys aren't going to commit. She knows that those guys aren't going to be around. But this other guy is, and he's kind of cute, and I guess, not my first choice as like a lover, but my first choice as a husband. It's like, again, cads versus dads, and they have to balance that out.
I think a lot of guys, married guys, would be blown away if somehow we were able to interview their wives privately and ask that question: are you in love with him? Because they're going to tell you, I love him, but I'm not in love with him anymore.
I think Tom Likas did that one time. Tom Likas did that one time. I think he had women call in. He says, is the man you married right now, that you're living with right now, is he your Prince Charming? And like almost, I think 90, 100%, almost 100% said, I remember that one. And they wanted to call in, and they was like getting something. It was like they were confessing in a confession or something. They talk about how crazy their pasts were. And I was so different when I was in high school, or when I was in college. But now, I've got a kid, I'm a soccer mom, blah, blah, blah. But they want to tell that story. They want to say, hey, wait, I'm really still that fun girl who was 22 that got with all these guys. And so what happens is these guys get into these marriages with these women, and the woman has basically at one point kind of checked out of the marriage because she knows she's never going back to that. And she's stuck with the guy that was good, Mr. Good Enough.
Let me throw something else your way. And this is out of Red Book. This is written by women explaining why guys cheat. Okay, so you got to keep that in mind right away. And it's all blaming the guy. The guy is some sort of, I guess, defective male. Let me run through a litany of these real quick, and then you can comment on those. Number one, he gets a rush from behaving badly. Well, there may be some truth to that. Or he might be going through a second adolescence, midlife crisis. That's another one. It was either get a new red Corvette or red Camaro, or get a new girlfriend. He may have narcissistic qualities. There's been a breakdown in communication. What was the other one here? There's two more I think they've got on here. Oh, he's insecure. If you're a guy that's cheating, you're insecure. And he might not be, I like this one, he might not be built for monogamy. So fire away on those. So, and again, this is for women, written by women.
That's exactly what I would expect from women who want to sort of psychoanalyze men, because those are things that are supposed to be right. Those are you're supposed to say that. He must be insecure. He must have a fragile ego. He must. It's
all his fault. Could possibly be hers. It's all his fault.
Yeah. There's absolutely no. And then we really should talk about solipsism sometime, but that's really an evidence of women's solipsism. Well, why is he cheating? He's cheating because of all of these reasons, and none of them have anything to do with me or my behavior. It's all about him. And I think one of the interesting ones of those is he must be insecure. Well, we were just talking about Gary Neuman here. Who was saying, I think it's interesting because he's got this kind of dichotomy going on, and even the stuff that he's talking about, because first he says it's because men don't feel appreciated. Right. But then he goes on and says later on that it's actually, when it's sexual, it's all about frequency. So really he's kind of answering his own question right there. Well, yeah, of course they feel underappreciated because they're not getting sexed up. They're not getting sexed by their wives. Right. That's how men feel appreciated, when the woman is there and she's enjoying it and she's really into it and she's enthusiastically consenting to it. That's why I say you cannot negotiate desire. And when you negotiate, and that's why you don't go to see a marriage counselor in the first place. But here's my other thing is like, so I'm not saying that men don't cheat. Men do cheat. But I think that women want to especially in this day and age, want to read in more to the definition of what cheating is. Is cheating just going and having sex with another woman? Or is it emotional cheating? You know, is it, oh, he watched pornography? We were talking on before we came on the air, how Christian women want to use that, you know, this guy's addicted to pornography. And we've already, you know, done the stats on that. What was it, like 85 or 90% of Christian guys, you know, said, you know, vocalized anyways, that they were addicted to pornography. Why is that? Why would they? So why would they?
You're divorcing him because he's looking at pictures. Let me get that straight. You know, you repeat that back to somebody, and they go, "Oh, wait a minute, that doesn't really make a lot of sense, does it?" But that is how many people have you heard, or couples you've known over the years that have broke up because it's almost always the guy. I rarely hear of the woman being addicted to pornography, but that's the way it goes.
I have to understand that when we look at statistics here, I mean, in the manosphere, we use this as kind of like a baseline. Okay, the Pareto principle: 80% of guys are going to be beta, 20% of guys are going to be the ones that women want to get with. Right? 85% of women rate men unattractive on OkCupid. Okay, we can go back. I'm just using that as a baseline here. So if you got 80% of guys who are married are beta to begin with, what I would say is and I've said this before. I've got a post in the links in the description here called Cheaters. And in there, I describe this as I say that the men who would be cheaters can't cheat. They would love to cheat, but they cannot cheat. And their women know that they cannot cheat. Wow. They know that they can't because they're that 80th percentile that not very few women want to have anything to do with. That women.
Oh, let me throw a quick joke here, Joe. You know Ron White, the stand-up comedian, right?
Oh yeah, very familiar.
So he does this thing. I'll have to look it up. It's on Tiger Woods, you know, and how Tiger Woods, he was trying to make the argument to his wife that Tiger Woods has incredible willpower because, you know, he had like 82,000 women throwing themselves at him, and he only fell 18 times. And he was doing this great foghorn leghorn impersonation of these guys when their wives are around, you know, the Christian's Men's Club, he calls it. And he goes, why? I can't believe somebody would do something like that. And Ron White goes, yeah, because you're 375 pounds. No chick in their right mind would want to go with you anyway. So, you know, it's not like you've had a lot of offers to begin with, pal.
Right. Well, when I talk about cheating, when it comes to men, there's two parts of cheating. There is opportunity and a reason. Okay. Most men, 80% some odd, have no opportunity. They simply cannot cheat. They can't cheat, at least in the way of getting another woman into bed and having sex with that woman who is not their wife. That they lack any opportunity. Then there's the guys, but they have a reason. They definitely have a reason because their wives aren't putting out, or they're living in a sexless marriage, or they don't feel appreciated. Whatever. There's lots of reason there, but there's zero opportunity. So the guys so we have to make up shit. We got to make up, you know, well, pornography counts as cheating. Emotional infidelity is a thing. You know,
texting somebody, right?
Somebody is something. And I'm not saying that there's nothing to that, but I'm just saying that for women, there's so many caveats. There's so many little like escape clauses in there, and so most men don't have the opportunity. If you know anything about what I do, I actually choose very sexy women to go to, you know, liquor promos with me. And so I have always been in a position where I have had plenty of opportunity, but I have no reason to. Like, I don't want to cheat on my wife. I could, but I don't want to because I don't have a reason to. She, you know, she satisfies me. She appreciates me. We have a really fantastic relationship. So like that doesn't even occur to me. And it's, I mean, it's nice to know, but it's, you know, that kind of stuff doesn't occur to me. But what I was going to say is like most of these guys don't have that opportunity to cheat. I agree. And so
that's where porn comes in. That's where I want to get to the women, okay? Women in particular. Let's start with married women. Okay. Why do married women cheat? My gut check on that would tell me it's the excitement. They're in a boring relationship. There's no excitement. There's no passion there. You know, all the things that are involved in a courtship from the get-go. All of that's no longer there. And it's the thrill. She can't get it. She can't get it from the, you know, the 50 Shades of Grey. She can't get it from the Harlequin romance. It's the thrill, the excitement. It's that alpha thirst that she has.
Yeah. It's alpha. It's an alpha widow kind of thing. Like I'm going to just give you an example here. I'm going to change the names to like protect the innocent here because the guy had 4 kids. But there was a guy that I used to know, religious. He actually was a pastor. And we used to go to this guy's like home group occasionally, right? Because his wife and my wife are friends. And his wife was a knockout. I mean, she was absolutely beautiful. And she was like, I think 38 or 39 when we met. Right. And so they were palling around and everything. And my wife says to me, she says, she's going to cheat on him. And then when I met her and I got to know them together as a couple, I'm like, yep. I say, well, she will cheat on him within the next year, because she's a gorgeous girl. She could have been a model, and I think maybe she might have been. She had blonde hair, blue eyes, and she went to what's the religious university, the evangelical religious Liberty University. She went to Liberty. That's where they actually met. I mean, they're very, deeply invested in the, at least Christianese anyways. They're very invested in that lifestyle, right? But she was very dissatisfied with her husband, because her husband was this typical kind of beta, kind of like nice guy. And he wasn't out of shape. The guy actually stayed in shape because he got that much. He knew that he had to stay in shape if he was going to keep this gorgeous girl. And she was definitely above him in sexual market value, or she certainly perceived herself as being above him. And sure enough, even before she was 40, she'd had an affair. She had an affair with a guy who was a bodybuilder, like a big kind of stud guy. Right. And I was explaining this to my wife. I said, the reason that she did that is because she wants to know that she can still do that, and she can still get back into the alpha seed side of hypergamy before she hits 40, because to her, the wall hadn't occurred yet. Now, in the manosphere, we would say, no woman over 35 years old is a 9 or a 10 or anything like that. She was good. She was probably a good hard 8.5 at least, but on the Tomasi scale, she was a pretty good looking girl. And I don't think anybody would disagree with me if I were to show you pictures of her. But she ended up cheating on him, 4 kids. Decided that the beta husband was the bad guy, and she left. And the kids are shared custody. And it was interesting to me, because this was the first time I kind of got this vibe, and it was confirmed that she was going to leave him because she thought that this guy is never going to amount to anything. And she wanted out. She'd played mom for 20 years or so, almost 20 years with this guy. And the guy was not exciting. He was a perfect guy by any other means, by any other standard.
No passion, no excitement.
This is why guys always say, well, I own my own business, and I'm a pastor of a church, and I'm a leader in the community, and I'm the coach of my
you're predictable.
Football. Yeah, all of that stuff. And you know what? Still get cheated on because perfect is boring. Remember that.
I want to talk since we're on this. I want to talk about how men deal with infidelity as opposed to women. Okay. And I've shared this story with you on my local program before. A very well-known doctor here in the community. I mean, everybody knows him. Great guy, stand-up guy. His wife cheated on him in a very public fashion. Man, thankfully he didn't take the Anthony Bourdain, route, but to him that was it was such a devastating blow to his ego. Because I mean, he's the big cat. Everybody looks up to him. He's like an octopus. He's got all these different businesses here in town, and the one thing that was supposed to be solid for him, she's stepping out because he's too busy. He was too predictable. He was too boring. Whereas women, when they've been cheated on, it's amazing. Not always, okay. There are exceptions, not always, but how quickly they can recoup, get everything together and move on to the next one without even looking back.
Yes, that's what I call the war brides dynamic. So when women split up with a guy, they have a much easier time breaking it off because and this is a Tomasi theory here, okay? But from the dots I've been able to connect through Evo psychology and Evo bio, women tend to have an easier time releasing a guy who they viewed as kind of less or beneath them, like lower them in sexual market value. If the guy was above them in sexual market value, or was at least perceived to be, they might have a harder time with that because they're seeing that as a missed opportunity. Again, going back to that love thing, missing that opportunism. If he's the one that got away, women don't pine for betas. Women don't go, man, that guy was such a nice, sweet dude. He would have been such a great husband. They don't pine for those guys. They pine for the exciting, because the exciting guys leave an emotional impact on those.
My oldest son, Michael, who's in the United States Marine Corps, just got back. He's young. He just turned 21, right? Got back from his first deployment in Syria. He's telling me stories about guys, while they're being deployed, chicks that they're already married to, women they're married to, or, people that they have been living with, just ditch them and they're over it. He says you would not believe how quickly they move on to the next big thing.
Yes,
and the guys don't know what to do because this is like only their first or second relationship, and they're like, she was everything to me.
Yes, yes. Again, idealism in that relationship. I'm looking right here before it goes away. As the guy says, women cheat because society no longer shames the crap out of them. Yes, you are 100% right. That's part of it. I think. I don't think that's the only reason, but they're like nowadays we support women once they've cheated. It doesn't matter if they've cheated because I would say even like women have support groups to help other women cheat. There are
they'll always blame it on the guy. It was the guy's fault. The guy pushed her into
exactly.
it.
And
you'll never hear somebody say the woman pushed him into it. He had no choice.
Yes, and you will find that women will enable other women to cheat if they think that that woman is going to be able to optimize her hypergamy better with another guy. So if a woman wants to cheat on a alpha that other women want to have sex with and other men want to be, women will not help that woman cheat. But if that guy is not that guy, if he's a beta dude, they're going to help her get with a better dude because again, it's a sisterhood. It's it's the sisterhood uber alles. They want that girl. If she's part of the sisterhood, if she's a girlfriend, you want the best for your girlfriend, right? Men, on the other hand, if men are cheating, men tend to white knight. They will tend to white knight and rat out their friends. I have seen, I'm not saying always, but I would say that this is mostly the case because, again, most men are betas. And so most men want to sort of step up and do the right thing because they think that any girl within earshot will think that he's this noble guy that they would want to get with. So he rats out his friends for cheating on whoever. I get that. I understand that. It's almost like a form of mate guarding, but that's the reaction. I'm not making a moral judgment about that. I'm just analyzing the behavior here. Most guys will rat out other guys. So
is it the same with women, or is it more so with the guys?
I think it's, and this is just me from writing as long as I have. I would say that women are less inclined to rat out their girlfriends about cheating, and they're more willing to run protection, to give the guy who was cheated on, to give his girlfriend an alibi.
Think about divorce for a minute. I mean, okay, how many times have you seen women who get divorced? All of their girlfriends get together. They have a great big divorce party. There's even cards and stuff and gifts. It's a big kid. Guys, it's not like that with the guys. That's all. I don't want to say it's exclusively female, but there's a whole different way. Guys, a lot of times, guys see that as a failure. I got a setback, right?
Yeah, I have a failed marriage. We even call it a failure. And women rarely say, "Oh, I had a failed marriage." It's men who accept a failed marriage. And that's another thing I kind of hate about this whole thing is, like, for me, I don't see marriage as sort of like a goal oriented, like it's a sport or something, like, oh, I failed to make a goal or something. I can see that, like, for instance, you know who Pat Tillman is, right? Yes. The guy, friendly fire, all that good stuff, NFL, played for the Cardinals, I think.
Right.
Yeah. That guy was married to his wife for how long before he died, before he was killed? I would say they had a successful marriage, right? But he's not there anymore, right? So I think that you can sort of define success or failure. It's not. I don't think it's something that should be a term that's based on the duration of that particular marriage. I know too many people. I counsel too many guys right now who are 70 years old that have lived out and are still married, but it's a failed marriage and the guy's still in it and he's still stuck in it. And so is that a success or is that a failure, right? They stayed married, right? They stayed together for the kids. Is that a success or is that a failure? And I think that we need to sort of, especially as men, we need to kind of push past this idea that
that's going to be subjective. That's going to be subjective too, because what, say, for example, organized religion would see as successful or unsuccessful, or what an individual sees. A successful marriage for me might be something completely different for you. It's not necessarily the same thing for everybody. There's going to be some similarities, but it's not going to be the same for everybody.
Yeah, and I think guys are willing to put up with a whole lot more, what I would consider intolerable, but they will tolerate a whole lot more than I think women will when it comes to the conditions of their particular marriage.
The one that blows me away.
Women are gonna listen to this and they go, well, what about abused women and stuff? I said, well, okay, fine, but I was going to say, like, from a long term, from the cases you don't hear,
right?
I would say that men endure more than women do.
The one that blows me away right now, and we're seeing more and more of this, and we talked about it on my terrestrial program on Fridays, is guys, okay, they find out their wife or their girlfriend is cheating. Okay. Now she's knocked up. It's not their child, but they're going to do the right thing. They're going to stick with them. In what world does that even begin to make sense?
I'm glad you brought that up, because this is kind of goes into the manipulation part of things. I had a guy in my DMs, on my Twitter DMs, hit me up and say, why do I feel this kind of sense of disgust or this revulsion, or it's like I want to avoid women who have had sex with other guys? Like if I had a girlfriend and maybe we were dating non-exclusively and she had sex with another guy, or maybe we were dating exclusively and she had sex with another guy, and I'm supposed to forgive her. I'm supposed to be the bigger man, and I'm supposed to, try to make it work, because relationships are hard work. But when a woman has had other sexual partners besides him, it's a common feeling for guys to think, well, I don't want to be with that, or maybe they're just kind of like sketchy about wanting to get involved in something like that. Or a lot of that comes from this need to know paternity, for men to ascertain paternity, because I truly believe that we have an evolved aspect of our mental firmware for men to desperately know what kid is ours, and if that woman is going to be a good long-term parental investment for ourselves. Because there's women, we always talk about women's risk in reproduction. Men have a risk in reproduction too. They have a risk in parental investment. And so if a man is going to stick it out with a woman, and he's going to be missing other reproductive opportunities. Right. And so here's the other, the kid is his.
Here's the other thing with this too. Whether it's, we've talked in the past about dating single mothers, marrying single mothers. Okay. And I've known people over the years, some guy, I'm thinking of a friend of mine, got married to a lady who had been married before. This was his first marriage. She had a 12-year-old son. Right. Okay. And he wound up adopting that kid as his, which turned out to be a bad decision. But he was of the mindset that's, well, yeah, it's only for 6 years. No. This idea that once they turn 18 and they're never going to be involved in your life. I mean, you could have a kid that you adopt that winds up just being great, okay? Or you could have somebody that is an absolute freaking train wreck. That train wreck will be with you until the day you die. They don't just disappear at 18.
Yes, it's interesting. Have you ever seen that? It's a TV series called This Is Us. Yes. My wife and my daughter watch that, and I can't be in the same room when they have that show on. Why? Just because it's such a normalization of like debasing or dequalifying or delegitimizing men's interests in their own paternity. And so it's like there's, it's all about adoptions. I'm not saying that there's not something noble in adopting another kid. Okay, I get that, but if it's your choice as a guy, like maybe you can't have kids, maybe your swimmers aren't swimming. Okay, I get that. I understand that. But I really think that it's high time we redefine cuckoldry to be when a man invests himself parentally, has parental investment responsibilities in a child that he did not sire, that he did not produce himself. That and how a woman adopts her attitude about that always conflicts with a man's evolved need to know his own paternity. When
you said that on my local program in Tulsa, okay, there was such a reflexive recoil from the listeners, especially women, because they were calling it, I was a single mom. How dare you say something like that about me? But the fact that you called them out and you said if you married somebody and you're raising children that were sired by another man, you've been cuckolded, right?
You've been cuckolded. Yes, you've been retroactively cuckolded. But here's why I say that is because ever since the sexual revolution, when we introduced on-demand abortion, on-demand divorce, we pretty much put hypergamy, unfettered hypergamy, and control in the hands of women. Part of that has been this need to delegitimize men's interest in their own paternity. So if they can convince guys that it's a noble thing to be to step up, right, to step up to the plate and to man up, they can convince men to assume the parental investment responsibilities of another man's child. What they've done is they pretty much won the Darwin Award. Okay, they've optimized hypergamy. That's what they've done. They can have sex with a guy who is exciting and is that good quality alpha seed that they're looking for, and they've combined it with the beta need, with the beta provisioning side of it. And so if you can convince men to adopt this themselves and to even self-police them, their ideology or how their feelings about this. If you can convince men that it's their noble chivalric duty to take over where, man, this man was a failure and he won't take care of his own kids. I saw this, somebody sent me this one Twitter, and it was a picture of this chick who had sex with this guy who I think it might've been a basketball player or something like that. And she was tweeting all this stuff about how she was in love with this guy and how it was going to be forever. And she loved this dude. And then the next tweet was, we broke up. I'm pregnant. I don't know what to do about it. He left me. He doesn't want to, he doesn't want anything to do with me. And then how noble this other guy was for coming in while she was pregnant, being there. He's holding the basket with the baby. And he made it his Christian duty to step up and involve himself in that whole thing. Like, he thought, oh, well, and she was a good looking girl. I mean, she was pretty young. She had to be around 23 or something like that. And so he inserts himself into this whole thing. And now he's a hero, and they're patting him on the back because he's essentially signing up for his own cuckoldry, knowing full well that, that the guy who
it's not his kid.
It's not knowing well. So if we can convince guys to believe,
that's a good thing to do, a noble thing to do.
And remember, what we're asking men to do is this is social engineering is what this is. It's engineering a generation after generation of men to believe that they should be doing that will make they'll get the manhood merit badge if they do that one thing. We're going to give them the title of manhood because you stepped up. And really, but what's the latent purpose of that? Look at the fundamental, Darwinistic purpose of that is she's just completed and she's just optimized hypergamy because you believe that, because it was socially engineered into your generation of men to think that that's a good idea or that you're going to be rewarded or appreciated for that.
Let me jump in here. You're watching Red Pill 101, episode 10, Cheaters and Manipulators. My name's Pat Campbell, radio talk show host from Tulsa. We're talking with Rollo Tomasi, the rational male. We're going to get into manipulators here in a minute, but I want to talk. Okay, so let's say a married wife comes to you, okay, says, Rollo, how do I bulletproof my husband? How do I make sure that my husband never cheats on me? And I also want to turn that around and say, what do you say to a guy who says, what do I need to do to make sure that my wife never cheats on me? So what would your advice, first of all, be to women to keep the guy from straying in the first place? What's the advice?
All right. Well, first of all, for men, I would say you need to be red pill aware and understand the essential nature and psyche of your wife and of women in general, and understand the game that you've involved yourself into and understand how to play it really well. That's the number one thing. The next thing I would say is you need to make yourself your mental point of origin and decide who is worth your while. Mm-hmm. Who do you want to involve in your life? Who do you want to bring into your frame, and make sure that you have your own solid frame. Make sure that you have a wife or a woman that appreciates you as much as possible, and not just appreciates, but admires you, that looks up to you, that can't believe she got with a guy like you. Right. It would be better for you to stay single and just live a single lifestyle than it would be to involve yourself in a situation where you're not admired. And I think that's one thing that guys think, well, I'm secure enough in my manhood to not worry about things like that. Well, congratulations. You're the next guy with Dr. Newman here, or Gary Neuman, right? I would say that you need to also stay on top of your own game as a guy. If you want to talk to like somebody, say like Hunter Drew or even Ryan, or Ryan Stone, they'll tell you, you still have to play the game. You still have to understand. That's why I tell guys it's important for even married men to understand at least the fundamentals of artistry or game, or how to sort of make that a part of your personality. Like, guys always ask me, well, Rollo, why would I want to game my wife all the time? It sounds like it's tedious. Can't I just let my hair down and be comfortable with her? And can't I just, why do I want to keep trying to pass her fitness tests? Why do I want to, it sounds like so much work. Why can't I just be myself, right? Just be yourself. Why can't I just do that? And if the fact of the matter is you're going to end up that guy that is the boring guy that because perfect is boring.
Yeah, so what is your advice to women though? That's what I want to get to here. How does a woman keep her husband from straying? What's the secret? What's the magic?
Well, let me just finish out real quick for the men here too. As dread is another part of it, but I would also say that you need to make that red pill awareness part of who you are. Okay, like people say, well, how come Rollo, he games his wife all the time? I do not game my wife all the time. It's who I am. When I'm talking to her, it's reflexive. Okay, I make myself a mental point of origin, and I reflexively pass a fitness test with her, or I know how to maintain frame with my wife. It's been 22 and a half years now. I know how to maintain frame with my wife because I am red pill aware, and yes, I understand. Thank you, MGTOWs. I'm sure there's going to be somebody who's, oh, you're going to be screwed one day. Okay, if you're in a marriage, then these are the keys to that. So for women, I think Ryan Stone would probably agree with me. I think it was him who said, feed him, F him, and what was the other one? Leave him alone. I think that you need to, as a woman, you need to have actual genuine desire for your husband. You need to I'm not saying you're not going to be able to negotiate that out of them. And I think that we're doing women a disservice when we say, oh, just marry any old guy, they'll do, because the clock's ticking and time's up, right? Because women don't like that these days because it's sort of a bruise to their already overinflated egos. They don't want to think that they're settling for a guy who's just good enough, because that's like asking men to tamp down their own evolved interest in their own paternity. It's another thing to say, ladies, tamp down your hypergamy and just go with the guy who is just, he's good enough. Maybe he's not perfect, but go with Mr. Good Enough. And women will read you the riot act. I think there was an article in the Atlantic from some author who said, Mr. Good Enough, or just settle for whoever,
Mr. Right Now.
Yes, yeah, Mr. Right Now. Too many women already do that.
Right.
They do that, and they end up with a plan B. Like we were talking before about how 43% of women have a plan B. So what happens is when they get into that thing where they've been settled, that's when they want to rewind. That's when they start pining for the alpha. They become alpha widows. They pine for that alpha. They keep coming back to wanting to go back to that exciting time. And I think that women need to genuinely have a desire for the husband, genuinely admire their husband.
Let me jump on the admire part. The admiration thing. I remember talking to you about that probably about a year ago. And then, I'm really big on body language and watching people, studying pictures. I look, every time I see a couple now, I look for that. Does she admire him? I told you a great story we've got here in Oklahoma. We've got a new governor, Kevin Stitt. He's a big old boy. He's like 6'5". His wife, when they were on stage making the acceptance speech that night, surrounded by, hundreds of people, right? She's only looking at him. She's looking up at him. It wasn't even admiration. It was almost like adoration. But I mean, she is into that guy, Whereas you look at a lot of couples and you wonder, how did you two people ever get together? What's it like? Because some couples, it almost looks like they hate each other.
Yeah, I've got and now I'm going to have to post this link. I've got a post called Body Language where I kind of analyzed all these pictures that guys were sending me of these couples. And, they want to say, oh, Rollo, you're reading too much into that. That's just you projecting. And well, it is too common for it to be just me projecting, because as digital photography has advanced and how we, the internet, we have more communication. We've never been able to sort of, collect all these pictures of couples and sort of read into the body language. But in body language, I said the same thing. Is if you look at the women who are in these shots, they're all looking, away. And the guy's like, kissing on her, kissing on mommy. And she's just like, staring at the camera going like, hey, and what that says to me is that she's interested in anything except for the guy that's supposed to be the love of her life, that she's, look at the ring, look at the ring.
I sent you that picture. Some guy posted a picture of him and his wife on their wedding day and the look on her face. And then in another picture next to it, juxtaposed, she's with Rob Lowe. Right. And the look on her face, it's like, oh, this is like
she's starstruck. Yeah. And I use that in that shot, that comparison in that. But yeah,
let's get into it.
I think I just real quick. I think I've shown you the picture of myself and my wife,
Yes.
where she's like kind of looking up to me. And I when I was writing that article, I started looking at my own pictures. I'm like, well, you know, I guess I'm doing something right.
Right.
As far as, you know, what I was reading into the body languages. But the other thing is, like, when I went to the 2017 21 convention, a lot of the guys, first thing the guy said is like, she's really into you. She's always looking at you. She's always, you know, focused on you the whole time. And I'm like, what can I say?
So let's get into the manipulators, and there's male and female, but I want to talk specifically today, if we can, about how women manipulate men. You know, it's like if you had to come up with the top 5 ways women manipulate guys. I mean, there's things, you know, emotions, crying, putting people on guilt trips. What are the big 5 that especially the guys that aren't married yet need to be looking out for?
You know what? I'm going to open that up to the chat here too. If you guys want to throw out like the top ways that women manipulate men, I'm more than open to suggestions here. But I'm just going to say like a few things. Is sex is number 1. That is the possibility for a sexual encounter, of a possibility of sex, particularly for guys who are in that 80th percentile into that beta 80%. Guys think that they're going to get lucky. That kind of guy, especially in the blue pill mindset, believe in luck when it comes to women. They think, oh, I got lucky with Susie tonight or something. Well, what they don't understand is that Susie uses her sexual nature, her sexual agency to get what she wants. There was a story, I think it was last winter, about how these women were going. I think it may have been going on Tinder, or maybe it was Bumble or something like that. And they were saying, you know, they put their pictures on and say, I need a man to come and shovel the snow off of my car. I live in Brooklyn, or I live in, you know, some, you know, upstate New York. And I need a real strong man to come and shovel my snow. And then what these guys were doing is they would go and they would shovel a snow, hoping that they were going to get a date, because right. Well, again, most beta men believe in transactional sexuality, not validational. And so they're happy to go and do that. And just recently we had that one chick who I think she put a ad out on I think it might have was Tinder or Bumble too. And she had something like 7,000 guys respond to her, and she basically set up a date for all these guys. And it was supposed to be sort of this social statement test, right, to manipulate. But that's a manipulation. 7,000 guys. And even when she had gone up there and said, hi, this is, you know, the jig is up kind of thing, guys still hung around to do this like test, like she was going to test them, like they had to run a relay race, or they had to go and lift weights, or they had to go and do some things. You know, she was testing these guys, and these guys still put themselves out there to go and do that because they thought they were going to get a chance with her. And even the guy that she ended up picking at the end of all this she just blew him off. Right. She's like, it's not a love connection. Right.
In the chat room, number 1, the possibility of sex, just like you're saying. Sex,
yes. Especially for thirsty guys. That's one of the reasons why you see all of these e-thoughts on Instagram or Snapchat or Twitch right now with their premium stuff. That's the number 1 way to do it. I think that's pretty easy. I see up here gaslighting. That was actually going to be one of mine too. So and
explain what that is for those that don't know.
It's this ability to make other people believe that they're crazy, like they should be believing something that they shouldn't necessarily be believing. But you're trying to sort of question whether or not that guy is actually thinking what he should be thinking. Now that's there. It actually comes from a movie called Gaslight, where I think it was a hypnotist or something who hypnotized this woman, I think it was a woman, who to believe things that she thought she was going crazy. She thought she was losing her mind because this guy was trying to convince her that she was losing her mind. Right? That's really what gaslighting is. So if you look at that in the sense of intersexual dynamics, it's when I think borderline personality BPD girls do this all the time. Is they think they one of the most common things they do with their victims is they convince that guy that he is the source of her psychological problems, and that he should believe that if he changes himself, that will solve her problems and they can live happily ever after. And that never happens because her problems keep changing all the time. So he keeps changing all the time. That's another really good manipulative one. Crying is another one. I think I have this one post, and I think it's called the Crying Game. Yeah, it's called the Crying Game. And
surprise ending.
Yeah, surprise ending. Well, actually, it's funny, as I forget the name of the show. There's this talk show where these guys had this guy call in, and he was going to propose to his fiance, or wanted to be his fiance.
Right.
And eventually he found out that she'd been cheating on him, and she didn't know that he knew. Mm-hmm. And so he did this thing live on air, and people will say, well, maybe it was staged or whatever. But the response, I think, is pretty much genuine in that he had the ring. I think she even found the ring and knew that he was going to propose to her.
Right.
But she was still cheating on him, even knowing that he was going to propose to her. Mm-hmm. And still carrying it out and basically catching her red-handed with this guy on the air. Did
you see the story out of Australia this week where a bride found out that her to-be husband had been cheating on her right up until their wedding day and was devastated. But when they went to exchange vows, instead of giving the vows back to him, she read the text messages that he sent to the other girl in front of the entire congregation.
Yeah, and then in those cases, we want to see men defeated. We want to. It's okay if the man takes it on the chin, but like in this case with the lady who was being broken up with live on the radio, she instantly starts crying. Well, I didn't know what I was doing. I was drunk. He was cute. And one thing led to another. And so it's like as soon as you hear that crying, as soon as you hear, and I think this is really kind of an evolved part of our mental framework once again, is that when we hear a baby cry, we want to go, we want to take care of it, right? It's okay, please don't cry, and we do something similar, I think, with women. When men cry, it's a whole different dynamic.
Men crying makes me feel very uncomfortable. And there's guys, we talked about Glenn Beck before. It's like crocodile tears. They're not real. I have issues with crying myself, and it's something that should very rarely be done. Obviously a death in the family, an emotional thing like your child being born, something like that. There's reasons to cry. But if you're a guy and you're constantly breaking down, there's something wrong with you. Seriously.
Well, I kind of want to touch on that probably in a future episode, but we really need to dedicate an entire show to vulnerability.
Okay, so let's do the women crying. Okay, and I don't mind.
I would say women crying is certainly a manipulative.
Yeah, I agree, and I don't mind being that strong shoulder for a woman to cry on. But there's a fine line too between that and then becoming what you call, great terminology here too, their emotional tampon. In other words, they're just going to vent on you all the time. They're just going to dump on you all the time because that can, boy, you want to talk about killing a relationship really quick. Go on a steady diet of that for 1 or 2 years. See how you feel afterwards.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up emotional tampon, because when a guy is single, when a beta man is single, he ends up being what I call the phone friend. He's the guy that she calls after the asshole alpha had sex with her on that weekend and kind of blew her off and is not behaving in a way that she wishes he would. And all of her manipulation and all of her controls don't work on the alpha, but it does work on the beta guy. And so that guy's there to be the shoulder to cry on, and
it's got an 80% chance of working.
Yeah. Right. And so she'll throw that out there, and those guys will be that tampon to suck up all those tears and to suck up all of that emotional side, because they believe in the sexual manipulation side of this. They think that if they do that, they're proving their quality to Milady. They think that I'm going to prove to her that I'm a better guy than the guy that she's been having sex with. So I'm going to be there for her. I'm going to be supportive. I'm going to show her that I'm the perfect boyfriend. And this is, and then what do women do is they go, oh, you're such a great guy. Any girl will be lucky to have you. And, or it's, will you wait for me? And when we're 30, if I'm still single, we could get married. I mean, I wrote a whole post on that call. I think that's
a hard no. That's a hard no.
Yeah, that's a hard no. But like, you'll be surprised how many guys go, yeah, well, now that we're out of our 20s, we're going to get married and have a good family together. And you are just essentially signing yourself up for what I call being a beta and waiting, and to fulfilling that hypergamous life goal and strategy for women to be that guy that Sheryl Sandberg says, the guy who wants an equal relationship and is going to, you know, put up and do his, you know, he's going to be the boring beta guy that women want to cheat on eventually.
This egalitarian or you know, equal model this promoted out there, because you're always big on it's complementary. We're not equal. We're never going to be equal.
Never going to be
things
equal.
that women can do that I can't do. There's things guys can do that women can't do. And when we're just by ourselves, we're not complete. But when you've got it, it's the yin and the yang, and they work. We work better together in an ideal situation.
Yeah. Well, then I think we got into this on your show once or twice, where I was saying, you know, we were talking about how complementarianism is something that sort of like the Christian right likes to throw out there. And really what they're doing is they're just using that as sort of a moniker for what is Christian egalitarianism, or really female supremacism within the church. But I think that men and women are naturally complements to one another. If they're in, if you take a lot of the societal stuff out, if you take this sort of the social engineering stuff out, if you go back even just before the sexual revolution, when you're looking at the old social contract, that old social contract was based on the idea that men and women were not equals, but they were good complements together. They did well. They did better together than they did apart. And I'm afraid that right now in this day and age, I can't really say that right now. I think that I think that it's possible for them to be.
Right.
So much societal bullshit that convinces women that they don't need a man and they don't need to be, you know, they can be these autonomous, independent, you know, strong, independent women who don't need men. Well, if you don't need men, then don't cry when there's no men to come around, then for needing men later on. And I think that in some ways, I think men are necessitous of women as well. I mean, obviously there's beta thirst and all that, but I think that we do better as a couple and do better as parents and do better as a married unit if both the man and the woman understand that, you know, man is dominant, woman is submissive. Man has strengths and weaknesses that are a complement to women's strengths and weaknesses. And I don't think we really, I think we throw that under the bus right now. And I think we just kind of, because we don't use, it's like, you know, we both have a gun to each other and say, you put your gun down. No, you put your gun down, you know, and nobody wants to drop their guns and nobody wants to say, hey, look, you know, we could be better off together. I really honestly think that's really the onus is on women right now, mostly because we live in a gynocentric social order at this point. And I think it's going to take some event or some kind of social upheaval that is going to have to sort of kick down that hubris that women have right now to really understand that on a large scale. I'm not saying no women understand this, but there are some that do. But
so let me jump in on this. You're watching Red Pill 101, episode 10. My name is Pat Campbell, talking with Rollo Tomasi, cheaters and manipulators. Do us a favor. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that like button. So let's get back to some of the tricks. I don't know if I want to call it tricks, but the ways women manipulate guys. Somebody in the chat room had here, it's the tone of your voice. Man, that is the number one that has come back at me probably since I went through puberty. It's not what you said, Patrick. It's how you said it.
Yeah, we're talking about tone. Remember that? And you're like, women would really turn on to what you have to say if you just relaxed your tongue. No, it's what you are saying that upsets her. There are games. I think one of the easiest. There's games that women will play that because they know it works. I think if you had a mother who had that tone that your wife has, she learned that from somewhere. She picked that up probably from her mom, or she picked that up from somewhere because it was effective in some way. I come from the behavioral school of psychology. That's where my degree is in, is behavioral psychology. And what that is you're seeing what's called one of the reasons I say blue pill is conditioning is because it's a social conditioning. It's operant conditioning of women on men. They want men to do. They want to do behavioral modification on men. They want men to behave in the way that they want. And so certain men, like alpha men, have to behave one way, and beta men, you stay over there and don't approach me, and you should know that, and you behave in another way. And so there are many ways that women manipulate men, which is really operant conditioning. It's just rewarding one, punishing another. And that's what really all of these manipulations boil down to, is getting that guy to do what she wants to do. And when a guy doesn't do that, that's one of the reasons I say polarity is a key to a successful relationship, because when that guy doesn't do that, he's asserting himself as his, first of all, his own mental point of origin, but second of all, he's saying, no, we're in my frame now. You're going to do what you're going to be. Either you're in my frame or you're gone.
Good.
And
speaking of voice, I want to get in on this real quick here. You usually hear it used against a guy. It's not what you said; it's how you said it. It's the tone of your voice, right? But I can't say enough about women's voices, okay? Because in fact, I was just talking to somebody the other day. It's very rare for me to find a female voice that, first of all, I'm drawn toward. That I actually I like the tone. I want to hear it. Even in some cases, a voice that could be sexually arousing. But that, I mean, you compare and contrast that with somebody like Joy Behar or Whoopi Goldberg or Roseanne Barr. I mean, those are, I'd rather listen to Fran Drescher for the rest of my life than listen to Joy Behar and Whoopi Goldberg. I mean, it's like nails on a chalkboard. Just drives you nuts. And then when you compound that with the nagging, I mean, you see why guys are driven away.
Yeah, I'll tell you another thing. We'll get to evolutionary psychology here. Women's voices change when they are in different phases of their ovulation. If you read the work of Dr. Marty Hasselton, she's done.
I've seen that.
There's this research about how women's vocal intonations change when they want to have sex and when they don't want to have sex.
Right.
When I'm gonna use some scientific terms like the timbre or something like that of their voice changes. And we've all heard this, we know a sex. Well, why do you think phone sex was such a big deal back in the day? It's because it's that sexy thing, it's that sexy sound that guys are attracted to or aroused by. It's part of the sexual experience. It's one part of the sexual experience. It's not the only thing. But that's why strippers do well. I mean, it's not just looking at a naked chick. It's the girl going there and appreciating that person. Getting back to the appreciation side of things when we're talking about cheating. One of the reasons why strippers have always made a lot of money and still do, even online, is because they've perfected the art of appreciating that guy, appreciating him sexually, and knowing all those things, such as speaking in a sexy voice to that guy.
Right.
Another way of manipulating that person, for sure.
Mm-hmm. So what are the and you're looking in the chat box there, what are some of the other ways? What about guys? Let's flip it around here. Mm-hmm. How do guys manipulate women? Let's give away some of the trade secrets for people like Anthony. What are the ways that guys manipulate women?
I think again, we can talk about sex, but men manipulating women only works if that woman wants to be in that seduction, if she wants to be a part of that. So it sort of takes a willing participant to be manipulated, first of all, and then to be seduced. If you've ever read the Art of Seduction by Robert Greene, that's the first thing he talks about.
Fantastic book.
You need a willing participant for seduction. There's no.
I'm not just talking about seduction though. I'm talking in general how guys will manipulate women.
I think that's the key right there, is like selling women on one thing and then being something else. And women know that. Women know that's a primary way that men manipulate them, is they lie. They say I'm an attorney, or I'm a doctor, or I'm doing my residency or something.
Right.
Like soon I will be this, and selling themselves on a bigger and better package. I think that for those guys, I think the primary way men manipulate is selling women on a perception of themselves that appeals to their hypergamous natures. Like, so if the woman, I tell guys this, and maybe I shouldn't say this is a trade secret, but when I tell guys who are middle-aged guys who are getting back into the sexual marketplace, I say, look for women who are right around the ages of like the epiphany phase, 29 to 31 years old, and knowing what they go through. You can use that to your advantage in your game. So you can appeal to what she's going to be looking for at that particular time, because you just want to have sex with her, right? If all you want to do is just have casual sex, there's ways to have casual sex. And
what would they say?
Well, I would say that you have to look for a woman, because women are looking for different things at different times. That's one of the reasons why I wrote the second book, was because when a woman is like, say, 15 till she's 25, she's really primarily only interested in the physical. She's looking for a guy who's a hot guy, and they don't really have much appreciation for a guy who has more intrinsic qualities, because they don't care about that. But then they become a little bit more important later on, because the priorities for the priorities that are prerequisites for their intimacy changes as they get older. So obviously a woman who is just fresh out of a divorce Maybe she wants to be a cougar and she wants to get with a hot guy who's like 19, 20 years old so she can have fun. And then, but after that, what's she going to do? She's going to look for something that's a little bit more permanent. It's knowing what these women want at a particular age and catering your game to give the perception that you are the best option for that. I think that, like I said, the primary way men manipulate women is to sell women on something that they're not. And this is one way that pickup artist guys get in trouble. Is they'll sell themselves as something bigger than what they are, and then
so the guys are lying about themselves.
Lying about themselves and lying to lying about themselves in the hopes.
I wasn't sure if you meant they were lying about the woman. You know, maybe telling her she was beautiful. No.
I mean, there's flattery, yeah, okay, but like women today flattery doesn't work for women today. Compliments are almost sexual assault right now. So flattery is not going to be something.
Sad but true.
Yeah, when you talk about things that are manipulations of men, by men on women, I really think the primary one is selling yourself as something that you're not, because that is really the ultimate betrayal, is to, for her to go home and have sex with you based on the idea that you are somebody. And then when you wake up the next morning, sorry, really, I'm not that guy. I'm just a homeless dude with a pickup truck and a guitar. That's all it is. And that there's even, I think they're even trying to pass legislation in some states that could be construed as rape. That if a woman had sex with you based on false pretenses, like you selling yourself, saying, "Oh yeah, I'm studying to be an attorney" or something, or you say that you are somebody that you are not, and she has sex with you based on those premises, then she wouldn't have had sex with you otherwise, and therefore it's sex she didn't want to have with you, and then ergo it's rape. So that it's retroactively, it's trying to sort of legitimize regret rape. Right? But I think that the ultimate betrayal for women in that process is bypassing women's hypergamous filters. So if women, there's another great book called A Billion Wicked Thoughts. It's by Ogvis and Ogvi or something like that. Some in Indian.
I want to see your personal library someday.
Yeah,
check that out, man. It's like, what do you got in here?
What I was going to say is they did a lot of studies about how women have this filtering process. And I don't think it's any great secret. Women are looking for quality above quantity most of the time, but they're looking for different things at different times, and different times in their ovulatory cycle, and then different times during their lives. So understanding what that's all about is really based on a woman's psyche has this sense that she has to be very, very careful, because we're talking about a human being that evolved to be very cautious about who she has sex with because of the implications of pregnancy. And I mean, right up until we had free legal abortion without any stigmas, really, right up until then, you have 100,000 years of evolution of women who knew that if I have sex with this guy, the possibility is that I'm going to be stuck with this asshat's kid, for forever. So I got to have a very very honed filter to filter out the losers from the winners here. And I want to get with a winner. I don't want to get with a loser. And that's part of that mental, that evolved mental firmware, very similar to men wanting that paternity, the certainty of paternity.
Knowing you're the dad. Yeah. I'm just looking at the chat room here. And I don't know if it was you or Rich. Somebody put up here, women's tears lower men's testosterone level. I think have there been studies on that, actual studies that prove it?
Yes, crying is, I'm glad we kind of come back to that. Crying is, it's an immediate response, and it's also triggers certain endorphins in men. I believe it might trigger oxytocin.
I was just going to say oxytocin, yeah.
Oxytocin, but what I was going to say is there's a lot of things. There are a lot of behavioral and environmental stimuli that will have a biological effect on a man, which will trigger a hormonal response in him, and then he'll feel something. And he'll have
is it normal for women? Because I've heard this before, but I want to get your take on this. To have or need a good cry. It's very cathartic. Guys, I couldn't do that, but women will do that from time to time when things mount up, pressures mount up, and they cry. They tell you what's going on, and then it's it's like a cleansing. It's cathartic.
Yeah, it is, and I think that there's probably some studies on this as well about how crying lowers stress, I think, for women. I'm sure it lowers stress levels. There's that aspect of it, but I think that there's a physical. Is there a physical need for women to cry? I'm almost convinced that yes, there is. I do believe that women have an evolved need for indignation, and along with that indignation comes an expression and a manifestation of that. So, and I'm using the term indignation loosely. I'm not saying they get to, come to crying over that, but one of the why, for instance, why does a tearjerker movie appeal to women and not to men? It's because, well, first of all, we're different, and we have, different neurology, and we're just simply different people physically and mentally. But I would say that there is certainly, if there's not a need to cry, it certainly is a.
It's their stress coping mechanism. It's like with guys, our natural default is to get angry, get pissed off.
I've got another post called What Lies Beneath, and in it I linked to this study of these. It was done by ABC, which surprised me. I think it was on 2020, where they got these actors to fight with each other. They looked like they were a couple, and when
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, when the man was the aggressor and was assaulting the woman, they called the cops within like 5 minutes of them seeing them do that, right? So the cops,
guys would jump in too to try to stop them. But whereas the other way around, completely different.
Flip the script, it was, I mean, literally hours before and if they do it at all, they could have gone all day. But I think it was like something like 4 or 5 hours. They were waiting for somebody to actually call the cops to break this thing up. And it had to be so many people going by, because when men are crying, or when men are the ones who are being assaulted, we just simply, we think that that's just the way it should be. And there's like, this is an evolved, innate part of human nature, that we expect that man, when we see a man, and they even said this in the studies, when we see a man getting assaulted or getting hurt, we think he deserved it. Whereas for women, we want to protect them. So when women cry and we hear that, we want to go and we want to protect. Just like we were talking about before, when the bullets are flying, men will put their bodies in front of the women just instinctually. It's another instinct for men to want to protect a crying woman and to want to find out what's wrong, and to help her out, because that had at least back in our evolutionary past, saving the woman, saving the damsel in distress, is something that men believe is going to lead to reproduction. That's going to, like, oh, she's going to appreciate me for helping her out and for like comforting her when she was crying. So therefore I'm going to get sex.
So, Rollo, I'm looking at the clock here too. We need to wrap this up today. Any parting thoughts? Anything big coming up that you want to talk about? You're going to be back in my regular program this coming Friday, Talk Radio 1170, where Tulsa comes to talk.
That is in the description.
Yep.
Yeah. I have a few things just to do a little bit of housekeeping here. I am going to be working very, very hard on this book. I've given myself a deadline for the 4th book of October 1st of this year. Okay. That's when I want to have it published. And I think I'm probably giving myself enough time with that. So I think that might impact my writing on my blog. I always try to do at least one new blog post a week. So
say I'm going to do the Audible again.
I don't know. I haven't decided yet. I don't know. Let's just say to be determined. Okay. I think I'm also, one of the other big announcements is I'm changing the look and the theme of the Rational Male blog. It's still going to be, high class, and I always work on something when I do design. I just try to make it as legible as possible, because most of my content is really what people are there for. But now I'm looking at it, I'm going, it doesn't scale really well on tablets and phones and stuff. So I'm going to make sure that it scales. And it's
one favor, when you write an article from now on, do me a favor, put the date at the top. That always throws me off. I always look for
the bottom to right. Yeah, to right. I know. I'll see what I can do. But I've already changed up my comment software, my comment plugin, and that seems to be working out pretty well. There's a few bugs I need to work out, but I'm just wanted to say, if you read my blog, or if you're a fan of whatever it is I do, just bear with me while I do some housekeeping on the blog there. I'm also I've decided I'm going to make this channel something. I mean, we're already doing this as Red Pill 101, and we're definitely going to keep doing that. I do have plans to expand into doing some other things. One of those is I want to do a religious show. I would like to start talking about that, to open up that discussion for this year while I write this book, because we
need to bring George on.
Yeah, I would definitely want to talk, and I want to start start doing a show that is dedicated to certain, religious issues, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like evangelical Christianity or anything.
Somebody wants to know when we're going to have our first female guest.
No, I don't think so.
Wow.
I don't know. I the only reason I would want to bring on a woman, and we've actually discussed this on the Red Man group, those are male spaces. The Red Man group definitely is a male space. The call lines are always open. The comments are always open. I wouldn't be against having a female guest on my show or on the Red Man group if I thought it was going to be able to contribute to the knowledge base of people who, like of men, because
add value.
I'm not doing this
for women.
Well, I'm doing it for women, but I'm doing it for men. And if women get something out of it, then that's good, because, where else do you have that? I'm speaking to men and helping men, benefit them and benefit their lives and unplug them and save their lives, literally. And I don't want to sort of muddy up the water. There's one that I would like to have. I think if I do interview any women, they will be sort of in a professional capacity. So
right.
I would very much like to have Dr. Diane Fleshman or even Marty Haselton.
I was going to bring her up.
That would be a woman that
I should get her on my local program.
Yeah, Marty Haselton would be great. She'd probably do it in a second for you, because you're terrestrial. I don't know if she wants to talk to me, but you'll definitely get a little bit of her trying to get some feminist street cred, because she's not popular amongst feminists, and she really wants to be, but she's not, because what she reveals about women's nature is as unflattering as anything I'm talking about. So that's why she has to do that. But
one final comment here as we wrap up too. I would ask anybody that's watching us on YouTube, either they're watching the live broadcast or later on the podcast, hit that like button for us.
Yes, please do that and subscribe. I just recently got monetized, but again, I'm not really doing this to turn a buck. I don't even know if you can do super chats on my thing just yet, but I'm hey, I'm happy to have beer money. That's great. But I want to, the other thing I wanted to say is I'm going to be starting an email list. It's not to sell you anything. It's just so that I have some insurance against getting deplatformed.
Yep.
I'm going to only do it for my Patreon subscribers at this stage. However, I think I'm going to expand that. If you are a subscriber of The Rational Male, if you go on my RMS feed and you get the daily or the weekly updates whenever I do a new post, that I'm going to put you on the email list there. This is just going to be things that I'm thinking about. I'm just going to be, quick hits, nothing that's going to be like, I don't have any affiliate marketing or anything like that going on. So,
all right. So this is a wrap, and then join us again next Sunday, same time. Yes, thanks so much for listening. Yep. Appreciate it.